Hey everybody, welcome to this video. We're going to learn how to set up Epic Online Services for multiplayer. So I have this nice plugin. You can get this plugin from the link in the description below, which sets up hosting and joining sessions. And once we set up EOS for our project, then this plugin will work and you can connect two or more machines across the internet. So with this plugin, if I click the join button, I will join a session that's being hosted on another machine. And once we're connected, we can both run around and play in multiplayer. So we'll set this up in this video, and if you join my Patreon, you'll get a PDF showing you all the steps that we'll go through in this video so that you can set this up quickly and easily for any multiplayer projects. So let's get started setting up Epic Online Services for our game. This video is made possible by the following patrons. Shout out to new patrons Roger Ridley, Nightfang, Jayamir, Sonny Osterland, and Gerald Diaz. I greatly appreciate everybody's support. So the first step to setting up Epic Online Services is to go to dev.epicgames.com, and we're going to choose Service. This is the Epic Online Services portal. Now, you need an Epic Games account. If you don't have one, go ahead and sign in. You should have one if you have Unreal Engine installed. So go ahead and sign into your Epic Games account. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Epic Games. I have two-factor authentication, so it's going to ask me for a code. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. So now that I'm logged in to Epic Games, I can check out online services. So once I'm signed in, I can click Get Started Now, and this gives me a whole bunch of documentation to learn about Epic Online Services. So this is something I do encourage you to take a look at some point. But I'm going to click on the Dev portal to go to my dev portal. Now, in order to use Epic Online Services for a game of yours, you're going to need a product. You can see to the left, just under products, that I already have two products set up, but I'm going to click Create Product. So we're going to click on that, and we need to choose a product name. Now, it's important to know that this name cannot be changed later, so you need to choose a name that you'd like to stick with. So I'm simply going to call this one UE5 Epic Online Services, as this is for a demo. So we can go ahead and click Next, and optionally we can upload a cover image. But we can click Skip for now, and we'll get a default image here. So now I have my new product, UE5 Epic Online Services. And over here to the left, under Products, here's my new product. If I click on that, I'm now open to my new product. And I can configure this product by clicking on Product Settings. So let's click on Product Settings. And the first thing we need to do is set up a client for this. So let's click on Clients. And I have some announcements here, and I'll check those out later. But if I scroll down under Clients, we see that it says a product can contain one or more applications called clients. These clients represent the different builds of your game. For example, client builds that players run on their systems, dedicated servers builds that the developer runs, and any other program that needs to access player data or Epic Online Services functionality on behalf of the product. It says each client has its own client ID and client secret password that the developer uses to authenticate the client. A client is associated to a client policy that determines what permissions a client will have. So if you're making a multiplayer game with a dedicated server, that dedicated server needs its own client, and the version of the game that players will download will use its own client. Now, for a listen server where you have the same build for whoever's hosting the game as whoever's joining the game, you can use one single client. So I'm going to create a client by selecting Add New Client. And we need to add a client name. So I'm simply going to call this Demo Client. And as we saw, a client policy determines the level of access for different features. So I'm going to click Add New Client Policy, and we need to give this a policy name. So I'm simply going to call this Demo Policy. And for the client policy type, you can choose some pre-made policies if you like, or you can choose Custom. I'm going to choose Custom, and if we choose Custom, we have to manually specify all the different features we want this policy to include. So under Conditions, there's User Required, which just means that if we check this checkbox, then a user needs to be logged in to execute any actions with this policy. Now, leaving it unchecked means you have a security risk, as any user can alter data associated with this policy. Now, for features, we have to enable features that we want in our game. And these are features that come with Epic Online Services. You can have achievements inside your game, and if you turn that on, these are all features associated with achievements. So you can check the checkboxes for these, and if you check the checkbox user required up here, then you have access to these additional features that require a user to be logged in. If you didn't check that checkbox, then you can't check these checkboxes. Now, once you're finished enabling all the features you want in your game, then click Save and Exit. Now, you can use a custom URL to redirect this. I'm going to leave that blank. And the IP allow list, if configured, says client credentials can be used only from IP addresses that originate from the provided CIDR blocks. This is typically useful when client credentials are used in a trusted server and not shared publicly. So we can leave that alone and click Save and Exit. So now we have this client, and it's called Demo Client, which uses the policy I've configured called Demo Policy. And I've only enabled the achievements feature, but you can enable any or all the features there. So now that we have a client, our next step is to go over here to the left and select Epic Account Services. Now here's my product. I named it UE5 Epic Online Services. I probably should have called this something more specific so you don't confuse that with all the other stuff going on, but this is my product. And we have 3 steps for configuring our Epic Account Service. We have brand settings, permissions, and linked clients. Now we created a client for this service, and we need to link it. We also need to configure our permissions. We'll start with permissions. Let's click on permissions, and we can configure these based on the settings here, but I'm going to leave them at defaults and click Save Changes. So now our permissions are configured. Next, I'm going to link my client. So up here at the top, I'm going to click Linked Clients and select the drop-down here and choose my demo client and save the changes. So now these 2 are checked off. Now for brand settings, this is going to be if you plan on releasing this game. So you're going to choose an application name, any legal requirements for your game, as well as a logo. And this requires that you submit this for review from Epic. So they have to review your game before they go and put it on their online store and so on. But this is optional, so we can get away with not setting up our brand settings for now. We just want to get this working. But when you're ready, you can submit your game for review. So we can go back to Epic Account Services, and now we see that our Epic Online Services product is now linked to the client that we've configured, and we can use this in our project. So this means we need an Unreal Engine project. So I'll go ahead and open my Epic Games Launcher. And for this, I'll go ahead and create a new Unreal Engine project. So I'm going to go to Library, and I have my latest version of Unreal Engine 5. I'm going to launch that, and I can select Games, and I'll make this a third-person template project, and I'll choose C++ and choose a location for this. And I'll call this EOS_demo. So let's click Create. All right, so we have our third-person project, and everything looks great. Now, we need to configure this project for Epic Online Services. So to do that, we'll go up to Edit and open the Plugins menu, and we'll search here for Epic Online Services, and here's the Epic Online Services plugin. So we'll go ahead and check that, and we see that it's in the beta version. We can select Yes, and we need to restart the editor, so click Restart Now. So now searching for Epic Online Services, we see that it's enabled. Now also search for EOS and Shared, and make sure that that's checked as well. It should be checked already, so we're good. So I can close the Plugins menu. Now we want to make sure our config files are configured as well. So find your project in Explorer and go to the config folder, and we're going to open default engine.ini. So that's going to open this in a text editor. And we need to add some things to our default engine.ini to make sure that our online subsystem is set to EOS. So way down here at the bottom, we'll make some room, and we're going to add some configurations here. Now, those configurations are going to be straight from the Unreal Engine documentation. There will be a link below for this documentation page. Go ahead and follow that, and you're going to scroll down and it's showing us the configurations that we need in default engine.ini. So go ahead and copy these lines, and we're going to simply paste them straight into the bottom of our default engine.ini. So I'm going to go ahead and line these up all properly, like so. And now our project is configured to use online subsystem EOS. Our default platform service is set to EOS, and we're setting our net driver to the net driver EOS, and B is using P2P sockets is set to true. So go ahead and save that, and we're done with our config settings. Okay, so now that our project is configured and able to use EOS, we need to link it to that product that we made in Epic Online Services in the dev portal. So for that, we have to go to Project Settings. So let's go to Edit, Project Settings, and we'll scroll down to Plugins, and under Plugins, we have Online Subsystem EOS. Go ahead and select that. Now under EOS Plus Login Settings, we're going to check Use Epic Account for EOS Login requires account linking. We'll go ahead and check that checkbox, and Use Cross-Platform User IDs for EOS Plugin doesn't use Epic Account. We'll check that as well. Now under Crossplay Settings, we can check Mirror Stats to EOS. That does what it says. If you set up your project to collect stats, you can send them to EOS. Same for achievements. We can enable crossplay sessions and mirror presence to EOS if you're using that. Now under EOS settings, we're going to check Enable Overlay. That allows the Epic Online Services pop-ups to overlay your game, and Enable Social Overlay for that feature. Now down here at the bottom it says Artifacts, and this is an array. We're going to click plus to add an array element and expand that element. And we see that we have the ability to set up some IDs here. Now we have these because we set up a product in Epic Online Services. Now we're going to give this artifact a name. So we can call this EOS product for lack of a better name. And I'm going to copy that name and paste it up here where it says default artifact name. That way we'll default to this artifact. Now we need to set up these IDs. So I'm going to go back to the dev portal here. And for this product, I'm going to go to Product Settings and simply scroll down. And here we have our IDs associated with this product, including Client ID. So that's the first ID we need here in this array element, Client ID. So I'm going to take my Client ID and click this icon to copy it, and I can simply paste that right here for the Client ID. Next, there's a Client Secret. This is a secret ID. We have that as well under Demo Client, which, by the way, is the name that I gave to this client. Again, not the best name, but for demonstration purposes, I'm using that. So I'm going to copy the Client Secret and paste that here for Client Secret. Next is the Product ID. So we need to find that. It's up here at the top. I'm going to copy that and paste it here. Next, we have Sandbox ID, and we can scroll down and find that under Sandboxes. I'm going to copy that and paste it here. And we have Deployment ID. So scrolling down even further, there's the Deployment ID. I can paste that in here. And finally, an encryption key. And we can ignore the encryption key. We're not encrypting this particular product. So now we've configured our project to use the product we set up in Epic Online Services. Now, the only thing left to do here is to actually go about creating an online session. And this requires some knowledge of how to do that. Now, if you want to learn how to do this, you can take my Unreal Engine 5 Multiplayer course. There'll be a link in the description below. But I've also gone through the trouble of setting this code up for you with a nice plugin that will create and join sessions for you. And we learn how to make this plugin in my multiplayer course as well. So if you want to learn how to make this plugin, go ahead and take the course. But if you just want to use my plugin, you can download it. And you can get that from the GitHub page for my multiplayer course. Now, this particular online repo has the plugin in it. So this is a full game project, and it contains this plugins folder with multiplayer sessions. That multiplayer sessions is the plugin itself. So if you click on code and download a zip file, you'll get the whole project. And if you show this in your folder, here it is. You can right-click and extract this, and now you'll have the whole project. Going inside that project, here's a plugins folder, and it contains multiplayer sessions, which is the actual plugin. Now, to get this into our project, we just need to copy this plugins folder over into our project. So here's my fresh, newly created project. I'm going to take the plugins folder from the demo project from GitHub and copy it and simply paste it on over to here. Now, if you're working with a project that already has some custom plugins, you may already have a plugins folder. In that case, you would simply take multiplayer sessions from this project from GitHub, this folder here, and simply copy it into your plugins folder along with all your other plugins. So now that multiplayer sessions is in our new project, we have our plugin. So now that that's done, I'm done with this project from GitHub. I'm going to close it. And now what I need to do is close out of the editor. And if you have Visual Studio open, go ahead and close that as well. Now we need to regenerate our files. So first I'm going to delete the save folder. I'm going to delete intermediate and binary. So delete those 3 folders. Don't delete anything else. And I'm going to right click on the U project, generate Visual Studio project files. And we can double click the U project, and it's going to ask if I would like to build the modules that are missing, both for my project itself and my multiplayer sessions plugin that I've just added. So I'm going to click yes. All right, so we've regenerated our project files, and I'm back here in the editor. Now I'm going to minimize that and open my Visual Studio project. And here in Visual Studio, I should now have a plugins folder. And if I expand the dropdown, there's my multiplayer sessions plugin. Further expanding, we have a source folder, multiplayer sessions, as well as public and private. Now there are a couple of classes here. The multiplayer sessions subsystem class contains all the code for creating and destroying sessions. And the menu class is a user widget. This has some basic functionality to call some of those functions here in the plugin. So that's the plugin that we've added. And back here in Unreal Engine, we can open the content drawer, and I'd like to see the content for that plugin. So I can click on the settings icon over to the right and check Show Plugin Content. And now we have a plugins folder, inside of which is a content folder and multiplayer sessions, C++ classes, inside of which we have menu and multiplayer session subsystem. Now here in multiplayer sessions content, we're going to make a widget blueprint that we can use to call some functions in this plugin. So I'm going to right click, go down to user interface and make a widget blueprint. And for the parent class, I'm not going to choose the user widget base class. I'm going to choose that menu class that exists in our plugin. So under all classes, we'll choose menu, we'll select that, and I'm going to call this WBP_menu. Now, if I double click this, I have my new widget blueprint. Now, let's get a canvas panel in here. We'll drag that in, and we'll add a couple of buttons. These will be very basic. So I'll drag in one button, I'll drag in another button, and the name of these buttons is very important. It has to match with the C++ variable names in the plugin. Now here in the plugin, in menu.h, we'll see that we have a couple of variables for buttons. We have host button and join button. These are the names that our buttons have to have in the blueprint. So I'm going to name the first button host button, and I'll name the second button join button. And I can resize them and position them. And I'm simply going to add some text so we know which one's which. I'll add text to the first one, and this will say host. And I'll add text to the second one, and this will say join. And I'll simply make them the same size. So I'll copy size X from this button and paste it in this one. And I'll copy size Y from the first one and paste it in the second one. And I'll just copy the position Y as well. And I'll go ahead and anchor these to the bottom center. And for the first one, position X can be over here at, we'll make it -500. And size X is 303. I'm going to set it to 300 and set the size X to 300 for this one. And that way I can set position X to 200. And now they should be nice and centered. So now that these buttons have the same names as those C++ variables, they will be bound to the C++ functionality in this menu class in the plugin. So now we just need to set this up so that we have this menu when we start the game. So I'm going to compile and save this, and I'm going to use this level as a starting menu level. But before I do that, I'm going to make a maps folder to keep track of all my levels. So in the content folder, I'll make a new folder called maps, and I'll save a couple of copies of this level. So I'm going to go to File, Save Current Level As. I'm going to choose Maps, and I'm going to call this Game Startup Map, and save. And I'm also going to go to File, Save Current Level As, and save another copy of this map, and I'm going to call this map Lobby, and save. Now, to be able to distinguish the two, I'm going to go into Maps and open my Game Startup map and simply remove some things from this map. I'll just basically remove all the geometry from it. So I'm going to go ahead and delete everything except for the walls and the floor, and I'll move that player start over to the center. So now this map is quite plain. There's nothing in it, so this will be our game startup map. So I'm going to go to File, Save Current Level. Now I'd like this to be the map that the game starts with, so I'm going to go to Edit, Project Settings, Maps and Modes, and for Editor Startup Map, I'm going to choose Game Startup Map, and for Game Default Map, I'm going to choose Game Startup Map. So now we start off with this particular map. And for this map, all that I want is to show that menu. I don't even want to spawn a character. So in the world settings for game mode override, I can basically set that to none. And in project settings, under maps and modes, I can change this default game mode to game mode base. And now it's not going to override the game mode here in this map. So if I press play, we don't even get a character spawned. All I want to see is that menu. So to show that menu, I'm going to go into the level blueprint. So with this icon, I can open level blueprint. And here in the level blueprint, I can get begin play. And from begin play, I'm going to create that widget. So I'm going to get a create widget node and select my WBP menu. Now it's very important that we select WBP menu and not the C++ class, as this WBP menu is the widget blueprint that has those actual button widgets. Now, once we create this, we have to add it to the viewport. So we'll add to viewport and compile and save that. And now if I press play, there's my host button and there's my join button. Now, don't go clicking these just yet. We have to package the game to actually test out this functionality. Now let's go back to the level blueprint. Now this C++ class, the menu widget, actually has a function for adding itself to the viewport, but it also sets up some default parameters, such as what map we should travel to when we press the host button. So instead of add to viewport, I'm going to remove that and instead call a custom blueprint callable function that exists in this menu class called menu setup. So we'll call that instead, and this has a couple parameters. It has a number of public connections. I'm going to set that to 2 because our plugin that we create in the course uses this value. So basically, it's how many players should join the lobby before we transition into some matchmaking map to play a game. Now, we can leave type of match set to free-for-all. You'll learn about that in the course as well. But the most important thing here is the lobby path. This determines where we should travel as soon as we click the host or join button. So this path has to match the path for the lobby level that we created, which we placed it in maps, and it's called lobby. Now, the content folder is replaced with game. So we're going to leave game. I'm going to remove this middle part so that the path says game maps lobby. And with that, our menu setup is complete. So we can compile and save that. And we can go ahead and close. So the last thing to do is test this out. So I'm going to package this project by going to Platforms, Windows, and Package Project. And I'd like to place my package project in a new folder. So I'll make a new folder here in my project called Build, and that's where I'm going to place my packaged project. So I'll click Select Folder and let this package. I can show the output log as well, just in case we get any packaging errors. Okay, so once I'm finished packaging, I should now have my game executable. I can find it by going to my project. Here's my build folder, and I now have a Windows folder. If you packaged for iOS, then this would be called something else, but inside we have a executable that we can launch. Now, don't delete anything from here. All these folders are necessary, But to launch the game, we simply double-click that exe, and here's our project we can host and we can join. Now, the way that this plugin works is if there are any sessions already in existence, then when you click join, it'll search for those sessions and pick the first one, and you'll join that session and travel to the lobby map. But if no sessions exist, you can simply click host and create one, and now I'm hosting through Epic Online Services. So the moment of truth, we need to test this with 2 players. So I'm going to go ahead and Alt-Tab so I can get all my windows and close that out. And I'm going to zip up this Windows folder. So send to compressed zipped folder. And I'm going to stick this on a Google Drive and download it on another machine and launch it from there. Now, once I've launched it, I can host from either machine and join from the other one. So let's test this out. All right, so I've downloaded this project onto another machine. I extracted that zipped file and launched eosdemo.exe. Now, when you launch this on another machine, you'll get a pop-up from Windows asking for permission. Go ahead and allow the application to run. And I have my other tester on another machine, and I had them go ahead and click host. So I'm going to launch from my machine and join that session. So I just need to click join, and I've joined the session. So here we are both in the same game session, and this is hosted through Epic Online Services. So if you learn how to do this with Steam, you would have to launch Steam and have it running in the background. None of that is necessary with Epic Online Services because we're going directly through EOS. So this is very nice, and it's also great for crossplay. If you have a mobile version of your game, you can have crossplay between PC and mobile. So this is great. So it's as simple as that, and if you want to learn how to make that plugin, take my multiplayer course. You can get the link in the description below, and you'll learn all about how the plugin works, how to create sessions, how to join sessions, and you'll learn a great deal, and it'll be a ton of fun. Not to mention that you learn how to create a complete shooter game and learn all about replication and how to architect a well-performant shooter game in Unreal Engine. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I appreciate you watching. If you liked, go ahead and like, subscribe, and join the Patreon. There's a PDF. If you join Patreon, you'll get to get this PDF that shows you all the steps that we went through in this video. But of course, you could always come back to the video in the future to set up an Epic Online Services product and link it to your project. Now, you can use this product for multiple projects. So if you create a new project, you can use that same product, just link up all those same keys in the project settings, and it should work just fine. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.